Imagine for a second that you are trying to start a college football team from scratch.
Which is hard enough on its own.
Right. It's a massive undertaking. But now let's make that scenario infinitely harder. Imagine trying to build this football program at a school where the student body is almost entirely female.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And you have zero budget from the administration. The players have to buy their own uniforms out of their own pockets, and just to add a little more flavor to the mix, they have to provide their own transportation to the games.
That is just, that's brutal.
It really is. Oh, and you are attempting to do all of this in the 1940s, right as a world war is breaking out. It sounds impossible, like a Hollywood script that would get rejected for being overly dramatized.
It really does stretch credulity when you lay out those constraints, the demographic challenges, the financial voids, the global conflict.
Right.
The math simply does not support the launch of a successful athletic program.
No, not at all.
The prevailing wisdom would suggest an institution in that position should focus solely on keeping the academic doors open, not fielding a gridiron team.
Yet, they did not just field a team. They built a legacy. And that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring the scrappy, fascinating 1940s origins of the Winston-Salem Teachers College Football Program.
Which is an incredible story.
It is. And if that name does not immediately ring a bell for you, you might know them today as the Winston-Salem State University Rams, a prominent powerhouse program in the landscape of HBCUs.
Historically black colleges and universities.
Exactly. We are going to look closely at the single decade that laid the groundwork for all their future national prominence.
And to map out that decade, we have pulled together a remarkable stack of primary sources.
We really have. We are diving into rare original newspaper clippings from the Sentinel, the Winston-Salem Journal, and the Afro-American. We also have our hands on historical athletic schedules, records, and this really incredible 1942 alumni bulletin that provides a super candid look at the campus culture of that era.
Setting the stage here, it is really important to understand why this specific sliver of history matters to you, even if you rarely pay attention to college sports.
Right.
This story serves as a masterclass in building something out of a void. It demonstrates how laying a foundation during a period of extreme adversity can set the stage for generational success down the line. It is a study in vision, resourcefulness, and sheer willpower.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to truly appreciate the heights this program eventually reached, we need to understand the depths they were starting from.
Yeah.
You mentioned that 1942 alumni bulletin.
I did, yeah.
What does that document actually tell us about the state of athletics at the school before this 1940s resurgence?
It paints a rather bleak picture of the immediate past, honestly. The bulletin contains an article written by an alumnus who went by the nickname Chink Martin.
Okay.
His piece is titled, Teachers College Athletics Through the Ages. And he points out that the school, which was formerly known as Slater, had essentially seen its athletic programs die out completely in the mid-1920s.
They just vanished.
Pretty much. Martin writes wistfully about an earlier, brief golden era before the 20s, where, in his words, nickels and dimes flowed like milk and honey for the sports teams.
Wow, quite the phrase.
Yeah, but for whatever reason, shifting administrative priorities, lack of funds, or changing demographics, formal sports faded away entirely by the middle of the decade. The campus just went quiet on the athletic front.
So if the formal programs are dead for over a decade, how does the culture of sports even survive on that campus?
This is where we find the unsung heroes of this narrative. The athletic spirit was not kept alive by a rogue coach or a wealthy donor. It was maintained entirely by the women of the college.
The female students at a teacher's college kept the football dream alive.
In a very tangible way, yes. The bulletin explicitly praises the female students who came from all over the state. They organized and played intramural basketball.
That's amazing.
Martin's article credits these women with keeping the spark burning. They utilized the campus gymnasium, they maintained a culture of physical competition, and they essentially held the space open for years until young men slowly began returning to the campus in enough numbers to form a men's basketball team and eventually a football squad.
That is a phenomenal detail. If those women had not been organizing games and using the facilities, the administration might have repurposed the gym or written off athletics entirely.
Exactly.
They literally kept the pulse beating. But when the men do finally return and decide they want to play football, I imagine the administration wasn't exactly handing out blank checks to get them started.
Oh, far from it. The rebirth of the football program was entirely grassroots, and it operated essentially as an unfunded extracurricular club. We are talking about severe logistical hurdles here. The players were responsible for purchasing their own suits.
I want to pause on that. Buying your own football uniform in the late 1930s or early 1940s, that is a significant financial burden for a college student, especially at a small black teachers' college during the latter years of the Depression.
It was a massive commitment, and it did not stop at the uniforms. They were coordinating and providing their own transportation to the games.
Just driving themselves?
Yeah, relying on personal vehicles, carpooling, and figuring out the logistics of traveling across North Carolina to find opponents.
Speaking of those self-funded uniforms, the mascot origin story is tied directly to that, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did they end up becoming the Rams?
It is a brilliant example of making do with what you have. According to the student accounts in the bulletin, when they finally pooled enough resources to order uniforms, the suits that arrived were predominantly red.
Okay, red suits.
Right. And a student committee convened, and apparently they cut classes for an entire week to debate this issue, which shows you where their priorities were.
Cutting class for a week just for the mascot.
Naturally, given the red suits, their first inclination was to call themselves the Red Devils.
Which is a very standard, aggressive sports moniker. Why didn't it stick?
They could not reach a consensus on it. So they looked for a compromise. They looked outward at the broader collegiate landscape. At that time, Fordham University in New York was a prominent institution known for having an all-male student body.
I see where this is going.
Fordham's mascot was the Ram. The students at Winston-Salem Teachers College, a school characterized by a predominantly female enrollment and a tiny male population, decided to adopt the mascot of a famous, robustly all-male institution. They essentially borrowed the Fordham Ram.
That is fascinating. It is almost a form of aspirational branding. They're projecting this image of traditional masculine collegiate athletics, even though the reality is a handful of guys carpooling in red suits they bought themselves.
Precisely. They were staking a claim on what they intended to become. Consider the mindset required here. Think about what sort of passion project you would be willing to self-fund, equip out of your own pocket, and drive across the state for.
Knowing there is no institutional support, no athletic scholarship, and minimal fanfare.
It requires a profound love for the game.
And a high tolerance for physical pain, considering the nature of the sport. But that scrappy dedication actually starts to formalize as we move into the 1940s.
Yeah.
When do they finally get back on the gridiron for a sanctioned game?
The records show that formal intercollegiate football officially returned to the campus in the fall of 1940. They brought in a man named Harold Taylor to coach the squad. And their first outing was not just a moral victory, it was an actual victory. They played Kittrell College at Bowman Gray Stadium and won the game 6-2.
Wait, a 6-2 score?
Yes.
That means Kittrell only managed to safety. So for those who might not follow the minutiae of the gridiron, the Winston-Salem defense was actually tackling the opposing offense inside their own end zone to give up those 2 points. It sounds like an incredibly gritty defensive battle.
The archives describe it as a very low-scoring, grinding affair. Winston-Salem secured the ball on the 2-yard line after completing some long passes, managed to punch it in for a touchdown, and then their defense essentially built a wall for the rest of the game.
Winning your first game out of the gate is impressive, but they were stepping into a collegiate sports environment that wasn't exactly welcoming to small, underfunded programs.
What's fascinating here is the systemic reality of Black collegiate sports at the time. If we examine newspaper clippings from January 1940, particularly from the Winston-Salem Journal, we uncover the formation of an alliance called the Eastern Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, or the EIAC.
Okay, the EIAC.
Winston-Salem Teachers College was a founding member, joining forces with several other small Black colleges.
Why form a brand new conference right as they are just getting their footing? Was it just for scheduling convenience?
It was far more vital than convenience. It was about survival. They formed the EIAC to combat a pervasive and dangerous practice known as suicide scheduling.
Suicide scheduling. That phrase carries a lot of weight. What exactly did that entail in the 1940s?
It was a deeply flawed economic reality of the era. Small squads like Winston-Salem teams pulling from a tiny male enrollment with non-existent budgets and undersized rosters were frequently forced to schedule games against massive, heavily funded, heavyweight institutions.
Let me guess. The bigger schools needed easy wins to pad their records and boost ticket sales. And the smaller schools were desperate enough for the payout or the sheer opportunity to play that they accepted the games.
That is the exact dynamic, but the physical toll was devastating. You were putting under-equipped, lighter players up against massive linemen. It was dangerous for the athletes and deeply demoralizing for the student body.
Just a completely uneven playing field.
Yes. The founders of the EIAC explicitly stated their goal was to eradicate these cutthroat games where the outcome was a foregone conclusion. They wanted to pivot the focus toward character development, bodily development, and most importantly, equitable competition.
They recognized a systemic flaw and opted out of it. They essentially built a protected incubator for their athletic program. Instead of being sacrificial lambs for bigger institutions, they created an environment where they could actually develop their talent safely.
That is exactly what they did.
And looking at the timeline, that incubator yielded results almost immediately.
The progression is remarkably swift. In 1940, under Coach Taylor, they're just proving they can field a team. The very next year, in 1941, leadership transitions to a new coach named Howard K. Brutus Wilson. And under Wilson, the team's performance explodes. They deliver an undefeated 8-01 season.
Going from buying your own jerseys to an undefeated season in your second year back is staggering. It implies that the raw athletic talent was always present in the community. It just lacked the organizational structure.
The local press certainly took notice of that talent. The 1941 clippings are filled with praise for standout local players, particularly their captain, George Ledbetter. He was a product of the Winston-Salem school system, playing the guard position. The papers note his physical dimensions. He stood 5 feet 10 inches tall and weighed 169 pounds.
169 pounds playing guard. Even adjusting for the era, that is a remarkably light player to be battling in the trenches on the offensive line.
It highlights the sheer grit of these athletes. The archives specifically note that Ledbetter played almost every single minute of every game. Iron Man football.
Wow.
You have a 169-pound captain playing both offense and defense, never leaving the field, anchoring a team to an undefeated record. It perfectly encapsulates the ethos of the program at that time.
So they have the momentum, they have local stars, they have an undefeated season under Coach Wilson. But they're building this in the early 1940s, which means they are about to run headfirst into a historical buzzsaw. How does the outbreak of World War II impact a college that is already struggling to find male students?
It precipitates an existential crisis for the institution and the athletic department. The draft and the broader war effort began rapidly pulling young men away from campuses nationwide. For a teachers' college that was predominantly female to begin with, losing even a fraction of their male students was devastating.
Do we have records showing how close the program came to folding during the war years?
We do. There is a revealing article from the Sentinel published in August 1943. The headline bluntly announces the school's intention to continue playing gridiron sports, but it includes a massive condition. The administration stated they would only attempt to field a team if the male enrollment proved to be large enough once classes actually began.
They couldn't even commit to a schedule in August because they literally did not know if they would have enough men on campus in September to form a roster.
That is the reality. Many other teams at black colleges in Virginia and the Carolinas had already abandoned football entirely for the 1943 season due to depleted enrollments. Winston-Salem was operating on a razor's edge.
But they managed to scrape a team together. They do not fold.
They endure. They field a team and navigate a fraught 1943 season, finishing with a record of 4-4-1. While it lacks the sheen of their previous undefeated year, in the context of global war and a decimated student body, achieving a .500 record is profound institutional triumph.
And that scrappy .500 rural wartime squad actually gets rewarded with a postseason opportunity, don't they?
They do. They earned an invitation to travel down to Jacksonville, Florida to compete in the prestigious 3rd Annual Flower Bowl Classic on New Year's Day in 1944 against Allen University.
I am trying to wrap my head around the logistics of this. You have a self-funded football program from a small teachers' college in North Carolina. They are operating in the middle of World War II, which means they are dealing with severe domestic travel rationing and resource scarcity. Furthermore, they are a team of young black men navigating the pervasive realities and dangers of the Jim Crow South. How do they even execute a trip to Florida under those conditions?
It is a logistical marvel. Securing train tickets, finding accommodations that would accept them, stretching their non-existent budget, the administrative hurdle alone is staggering. The fact that they successfully coordinated the journey and took the field in a New Year's Day bowl game is a testament to their profound stubbornness.
The records show they lost that bowl game to Allen University 33-0. It was a decisive defeat. But I would argue the score is entirely secondary. The triumph was standing on that field in Jacksonville.
Absolutely.
4 years prior, the program did not exist. The gym was being kept warm by women playing intramural basketball. Now, despite a world war, they are playing in a Holiday Bowl game.
They validated their own existence. They proved they possess the organizational resilience to survive the harshest possible external conditions. And by merely surviving that gauntlet, they preserved the foundation for the era that was about to dawn.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The war eventually concludes. Society begins to stabilize. And in 1945, the trajectory of the Winston-Salem Teachers College Rams undergoes a seismic shift.
The archives from the late summer of 1945, specifically clippings from July and September, begin tracking rumors of a significant acquisition. A towering former All-American lineman from Morgan State was reportedly weighing a proposition to travel south and join Coach Brutus Wilson's staff as an assistant. His name was Clarence Gaines, though history remembers him almost universally as Big House Gaines.
Big House is such an evocative nickname.
And entirely accurate. He was a physically imposing figure, but his vision for the athletic department was equally massive. However, 1945 was not solely defined by his arrival, it was a dual milestone. In that same year, Winston-Salem Teachers College was formally admitted into the CIAA, the Colored Intercollegiate Athletic Association.
Can you contextualize the CIAA for us? What did admission to that specific conference signify for the college?
The CIAA was the premier athletic conference for historically black colleges and universities. It was the upper echelon of competition. Gaining admission meant Winston-Salem was no longer viewed as a scrappy, independent startup scrambling for opponents. It meant they had met rigorous institutional and athletic standards. They were now recognized peers of the heavyweights in black collegiate sports.
So they have the institutional backing of a major conference, and they have this imposing new assistant coach on the sidelines. How quickly does the culture shift from merely surviving to actively competing?
The ascent is remarkably rapid. Gaines serves his initial year as an assistant in 1945. By 1946, the administration elevates Big House to the role of head coach. The dividends are apparent by the very next season. In 1947, they claim the Teachers College Championship of North Carolina.
And they didn't just win, they dominated defensively. The records show they shut out Fayetteville 18-0, and they blanketed Elizabeth City 14-0. The days of grinding out 6-2 victories seem to be well behind them.
The caliber of play elevated dramatically under Gaines. By 1948, he orchestrates a stunning 8-1 record, routinely dismantling established programs. But the true benchmark of their arrival, the moment that validates the entire decade of struggle, occurs in November 1949.
The game against St. Paul's Polytechnic Institute.
Yes. A clipping from the Winston-Salem Journal captures the magnitude of the event. St. Paul's was a bitter arch-rival. The headline proudly declares the dominance of Big House Gaines Gritters. The Rams did not merely defeat their rival, they subjected them to a comprehensive 56-0 shutout.
A 56-point margin of victory against a primary rival is a definitive statement. It is the program announcing to the region that they are no longer the underdog.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, reviewing the arc of this single decade is breathtaking.
The contrast between 1940 and 1949 is almost difficult to reconcile.
You begin the 1940s with a ghost of a program. You have an athletic culture kept on life support by women playing intramural sports in a quiet gymnasium. You transition to a handful of students pooling their pennies for red suits and borrowing a mascot from a New York university just to feel legitimate. You observe coaches forming alliances merely to protect their undersized players from the physical dangers of suicide scheduling. You witness the existential terror of a global conflict stripping away the male student body, forcing them to wait until September just to see if they have enough bodies to field a roster.
It's just obstacle after obstacle.
And yet, piece by piece, they construct a bedrock. By the close of the decade, they have secured membership in the premier HBCU conference, they have handed the reins to a Hall of Fame coach in Clarence Gaines, they are capturing state championships, and they are executing 56-point shutouts. This 10-year span transformed a self-funded club into the foundational bedrock of a national athletic powerhouse.
So what does this all mean? For you listening right now, I think this deep dive serves as the ultimate testament to the value of laying the groundwork, especially when your ultimate vision seems completely divorced from your current reality. When you have zero institutional support, no funding, and demographic odds are stacked against you, simply taking the field against Kittrell College And grinding out a 6-2 win is a monumental act, because you can never achieve the 56 AU shutouts under the bright lights of the big leagues if you are not willing to buy your own uniform and drive yourself to the dirt field first.
I would like to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building precisely on that concept of groundwork. Revisit the women playing intramural basketball at the very beginning of our timeline. They are the individuals who quietly maintained the spark when all the resources had evaporated. They were not playing for glory, and they were not playing for athletic scholarships. They were holding the space for a future they might not even directly participate in. So, examine your own pursuits. What impossible project, vision, or dream in your own life just needs you to keep playing in the empty gym? What endeavor requires you to quietly keep the spark burning day after day until your own big house gains finally arrives to elevate it to the next level?
That is a phenomenal question to end on. A massive thank you to you, the listener, for joining us on this custom-tailored deep dive into the resilient, scrappy origins of the Winston-Salem State Rams. Keep your eyes open, keep asking probing questions, and keep digging into the hidden histories that surround you. Until next time.